Let's get started on the USMLE journey, especially for international medical students or graduates. The first thing we need to think about are the exams. There are three important ones we must pass to apply for the match: Step 1, Step 2, and the OET. And this will be a series of videos on this channel on the whole process A to Z. I'm Dr. Umar Khan, and I'm actually done with my internal medicine residency, and I will share my experiences and the experiences of younger doctors, those who I support and guide. I'm going to summarize it right up front and then give you all the much needed details you are looking to know, everything there is to know about preparing for the USMLE Step 1. And starting about Step 1, let's realize that Step 1 recently changed from a 3-digit score to a simple pass or fail grade, making it shorter but still challenging. Then preparing for the exam is of course essential, but there's no need to get overwhelmed with excessive resources and advice, and I will list all of this as I go through this video. The basic recommended study materials include First Aid, Boards and Beyond, 𝐓𝐨𝐩 for Microbiology, UWorld, Pathoma for Pathology. Then you have supplemental sources like 𝐕HTN for Cardiology and Physiology. And then you have Steve Harris Kaplan lecture series for pharmacology, and you have Physio, 𝐓𝐵HYSEO for physiology. Then you have practice exams, for example, the NBME, the AWSAs, and the Free 120. They're valuable for assessment and simulation of the real exam conditions, which everybody needs to know, even if they are going for pass or fail or going for any score. Then previously, I believe the passing mark for Step 1 was 196, but aiming for a score higher, around 230 plus in your practice exams, is recommended to make sure you don't fail this examination. If you fail, then probably that is it for you, especially if you are an international medical graduate, and I will talk all about this in this detailed video. And then this exam is not just a test of your knowledge, but also a test of your character and mental strength. So be prepared for this exam from all angles. Now, going into all the details on all the specifics and how you are going to go about doing this. The exam, as we know, has recently changed. Instead of giving a 3-digit score like before, now it's just pass or fail. This has made the exam shorter, which is good news, but don't think this has made the write easier. It's still quite challenging. However, I would say a bit more manageable. Now the resources. Number 1 is going to be First Aid. This is honestly a God-sent book, and I believe people who wrote this book, they deserve a Nobel Prize. It is largely a complete book, but I do see that there are some things missing, and I will talk about that as well. But this book is perfect and needs to be done properly again and again. After annotating my First Aid and Boards and Beyond and UW, I would revise the entire book multiple times, and I then felt that I was ready for the exam. Now, next are Kaplan videos, books, and the Q Bank. But the thing about Kaplan videos and books is it depends on how much time you have in hand and how much you already know. If your school education was not great, then you can potentially go through these, because these are extensive and these are very, very time consuming. If you have no base, then probably go for Kaplan, or you could go for the Boards and Beyond, which I'm going to talk about next. I would advise you skim through the Kaplan videos at a faster pace, but not skip them if you have to build your base from the start. Again, Kaplan videos are not mandatory, as you can pass or even score good back in the day without Kaplan. But even if you do go for Kaplan, I recommend that you skip the microbiology videos, especially the bacterias, because everything will be in First Aid. Again, First Aid should be your base. Then you can skip pathology. Instead, I would study it from Pathoma, and I would talk about Pathoma down the line as well. You can also skip pharmacology videos because it's too detailed that you really don't need. Lastly, of course, always keep your First Aid handy and try to familiarize yourself with it as much as you can, as soon as you can, and try to know every single word written in the book, because at the end, you will not be remembering much from Kaplan, but First Aid is where you're going to be getting your memory from. Again, Kaplan is if your med school is completely useless. Then we talk about Boards and Beyond. So these videos are a good source for people who enjoy learning through videos. And in addition, it's also a great way to build a base before you tackle First Aid itself. The way I would go about Boards and Beyond is that I would base First Aid as my main book, and I would open up First Aid. I would turn on the videos for Boards and Beyond and go through a topic that is similarly overlapping and add things into First Aid that I want to add, and I think this would be high yield. That's how I would prepare from boards and beyond. This will give you a double revision and allow you to add some extra information from boards and beyond into your first aid. And the ultimate goal was to, of course, is to accumulate all the knowledge into your first aid and then revise it when the time comes. Then is 𝐓𝐨𝐩, and a lot of people would have done 𝐓𝐨𝐩 from microbiology in your third year of medical school, largely outside the US. If you don't, odds are that you aren't in third grade, right? That said, do 𝐓𝐨𝐩 for microbiology. Do it well. For your examinations, 𝐓𝐨𝐩 will be adequate. Actually, no need to watch boards and beyond for micro. Just do 𝐓𝐨𝐩 and add the extra knowledge into your first aid. Also, the UWorld block for micro will be called infectious disease. Just a heads up. Also, there is 𝐓𝐨𝐩 for pharma. I didn't use 𝐓𝐓𝐨 for pharma. I think what you have in first aid, it would be good enough. And if you want, you could do the Kaplan pharmacology book if you prefer. Then we have pathoma for pathology, and this forms a significant chunk of your examination, your step 1 content. For that reason, you need to know your pathology well. Of course, this will help you out in step 2 down the line as well. And while I still recommend studying from Robbins for your regular medical school examinations, pathoma and its videos are a must. They really help. Lines from the book will literally come up and show up in your questions. So I think pathoma is something you need to really consider. Then we come down to this question bank, UWorld, and along with first aid, this is the holy grail for step 1 prep and step 2 prep. This will prepare you for the exam and help you access and assess and see what you know and what you don't know. It will be, of course, a lot. Trust me, this is going to be a lot of questions. But I'm going to give you a little warning before you jump into UWorld. The type of questions they ask are more complex and have multiple levels to it that you may actually not see in the real exam. A typical example I give for step 1 is a question where the STEM is hinting at a patient which may have C. diff, but the answers they're looking for may be how to treat it, how this organism grows, or if they want to make you think how the drug of choice actually acts. Basically, you just need a few days of UWorld and you will get the hang of how things actually work. Regarding how to use UW, first and foremost, I suggest that you buy it for at least 6 months online. For your first pass, remember that UWorld is not an assessment tool, it's a learning tool. This will be your first interaction with a very different system and with many concepts that you haven't studied before. So remember, as long as you learn from it, there is no failure. What I tell people is have the first go in a system-wise manner. One thing to consider is that you should go about doing this in an untimed tutor mode, and when you open this up you will see what that is, and then go along with it. I would read the entire explanation regardless of whether my answer was correct or incorrect, and then annotate it into first aid. Sometimes I would need to add sticky notes or longer sheets to write the new information properly, because this will be reasonable information for you to know about. Now going to more practice exams, NBME, UWSAs, and the free 120. The NBMEs are practice exams everyone uses to assess their prep. There are 6, numbered 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. They're made of 4 blocks of 50 questions each, and you have to do them, if I recall, in 1 hour and 14 minutes. In total, you will be doing around 200 questions, and you will be using it to simulate an actual exam condition. When you give the exam, you should aim to give it with no distractions and near exam conditions. Keep your snacks and water at hand and your phone away. Of course, take breaks between the blocks, but make the breaks around 5 minutes, not more than that. Give your first NBME. Let's say, for example, you can use the 25 one after completing your second part of your first pass through UWorld and after completely revising your first aid. So while you're revising, do at least 1 block of UWorld to make sure that you're in touch with how to answer these questions. So after that, take the NBME and see where you are at. This will give you a yardstick that how much more do you actually need to learn. This is your first exam experience, so please don't go expecting to score more than 240. The passing mark on the exam is 196 back in the day. So if you are around 200, you're good to go and should be ready for your exam soon. But make sure to revise and annotate the answers and explanations of the NBME, because they are also super important and are sometimes repeated on exams. So after your first NBME, take a day off and then revise the entire first aid and focus on your weak areas. And then, you guessed it, you have to study more, go through first aid more, go through the other cycles of UW, and then at the end, look to work on your NBME as your final exams to prepare for knowing whether you are ready to appear in the USMLE Step 1. Now, after your first go at NBME, you will of course go through your UW, then you will go through your first aid, and when you do the NBME exam again, you should have at least 10 to 15 points higher in your subsequent NBME. But we want to take that raw score as an absolute to be safer. You can repeat the cycle and continue until you are done with 4 NBMEs. When you're done with your 4 NBMEs, you should be able to revise relatively quicker after that. But by now, you should be around 10 to 12 days away from your exam date. Now, revise your first aid again, and this time we will give UWSA, the UWorld self-assessment that you will get with your subscription of UWorld. This test is much more predictive and comprises of 4 blocks of 40 questions. You should try and aim at being around 230 marks. I know passing is around 196, but you still want to be careful with the exam and always over prepare in case you have a bad day. You could get sick, you could have allergies. So after completing UWSA, the best thing to do is take a few days to possibly gain some sanity. But if you are okay, you're not that stressed, it's okay, keep on revising your first aid. Now this will be the final revision before your exam itself. Now you should give both the USWA2 and the free 120. You can of course find this online. The purpose of this so that you can do a total of 280 questions, giving you the feel of the exam itself in its full length and glory. This will be the last test you'll need because you have timed it right and been going in an upward trajectory. And you will be only 4 to 5 days away from the real exam. So rest up after this and then revise for the exam itself. So I hope this was it. Remember, the key to success is preparation. So take your time, stay focused, and you will do great on your journey. Again, I'm Dr. Omar Khan. I will have loads of videos in this series A to Z regarding how to get into residency. If you are interested, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.